Palestinian militant group Hamas has begun a war against Israel, the country's defense minister said on Saturday after a barrage of rockets were fired and fighters from the Palestinian enclave reportedly infiltrated Israel, a major escalation in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Violence between Israel and the Palestinians has been surging for almost 2 years, with fatalities in the occupied West Bank hitting a scale not seen in years. At least 2 people were killed in Israel, officials said. Israel's defense minister Yoav Gallant said Palestinian militant group Hamas has launched a war against the state of Israel. Troops are fighting against the enemy at every location, he said in a statement. AFP journalists said Israel's military began airstrikes on Gaza, following the rocket barrage from inside the territory which is sealed off from Israel by a militarized border barrier. Dozens of IDF fighter jets are currently striking a number of targets belonging to the Hamas terrorist organization in the Gaza Strip, the military said. Rockets had earlier streamed across the sky repeatedly after the first launches from multiple locations across the Palestinian territory from 6:30 a.m., 3:30 GMT, AFP journalists in Gaza City reported. The armed wing of Hamas, which controls Gaza, said it was behind the aerial assault, saying its militants had launched thousands of rockets and its fighters seized an Israeli tank. Israel's army did not immediately comment on the tank claim when contacted by AFP. Israeli security chiefs convened over the violence, which occurred on Shabbat and during a Jewish holiday. Air raid sirens wailed across southern and central Israel, and the army urged people to stay near bomb shelters. AFP journalists in Jerusalem heard multiple rockets being intercepted by Israeli air defense systems. Sirens blared across the city on more occasions than in any Gaza conflict in the past 3 years. We decided to put an end to all the crimes of the occupation, Israel. Their time for rampaging without being held accountable is over, the Ezzedine al-Qassam brigade said. We announce Operation Al-Aqsa Flood and we fired, in the first strike of 20 minutes, more than 5,000 rockets. Israel's military said Hamas launched massive shooting of rockets, while at the same time, terrorists infiltrated into Israeli territory in a number of different locations. Hamas will face the consequences and responsibility for these events, it said in a statement. In Israeli-annexed East Jerusalem, some Palestinian residents cheered and blew their car horns as sirens blared. A regional council for Israeli communities northeast of Gaza said its president was killed in an exchange of fire with attackers from Gaza. Separately, a woman in her 60s was killed due to a direct hit, in Israel, the Magen David Adom Emergency Services said. 15 others were wounded, 2 of them seriously, medics said. Hamas called on the resistance fighters in the West Bank, as well as our Arab and Islamic nations, to join the battle, in a statement posted on Telegram. The United States condemned the Hamas fire and urged all sides to refrain from violence and retaliatory attacks. Terror and violence solve nothing, the U.S. Office of Palestinian Affairs wrote on X, formerly Twitter. Israel has imposed a crippling blockade on Gaza since 2007 after Hamas took power. Palestinian militants and Israel have fought several devastating wars since. The latest violence follows heightened tensions in September when Israel closed the border to Gazan workers for 2 weeks. The shutdown of the crossing came as Palestinian demonstrators along the border burned tires and threw rocks and petrol bombs at Israeli troops, who responded with tear gas and live bullets. May 2021. After weeks of tension during the Muslim fasting month of Ramadan, hundreds of Palestinians are wounded in clashes with Israeli security forces at the Al-Aqsa compound in Jerusalem, Islam's third holiest site. After demanding Israel withdraw security forces from the compound, Hamas unleashed a barrage of rockets from Gaza into Israel. Israel hits back with airstrikes on Gaza. Fighting goes on for 11 days, killing at least 250 people in Gaza and 13 in Israel. August 2022, at least 44 people, including 15 children, are killed in 3 days of violence that began when Israeli airstrikes hit a senior Islamic Jihad commander. Israel says the strikes were a preemptive operation against an imminent attack by the Iranian-backed militant movement, targeting commanders and arms depots. In response, Islamic Jihad fired more than 1,000 rockets towards Israel. Israel's Iron Dome air defense system prevents any serious damage or casualties. January 2023, Islamic Jihad in Gaza fires 2 rockets towards Israel after Israeli troops raid a refugee camp and kill 7 Palestinian gunmen and 2 civilians. The rockets set off alarms in Israeli communities near the border but caused no casualties. Israel responds with airstrikes on Gaza. October 2023, Hamas launches the biggest attack on Israel in years from the Gaza Strip, with a surprise assault combining gunmen crossing the border with a heavy barrage of rockets. Islamic Jihad says its fighters have joined the attack. Israel's military said it was on a war footing, adding it had carried out strikes targeting Hamas in Gaza and had called up reservists.